All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about Keith Thurman, Errol Spence Jr., and Keith Thurman calling Errol a hater or saying he's drinking on his hater-aide because eventually Errol Spence is going to have to fight Keith Thurman. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back, welcome back. Before I get into the subject matter of the video, please make sure if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell icon so you can get notified of when we release videos. And also share the video, like the video, will be greatly appreciated. In this video, we're going to talk about Keith one-time Thurman. Somebody, in my personal opinion, man, I like Keith Thurman a lot. I've never met him as a person, but I like him as far as being a fighter, man. I like him because he's one of these guys. He's a gregarious guy. He's a funny guy. He always has something funny to see. He always has something funny to say. So, I like listening to him. He always gives me a little something extra when he's talking. And that's not something you really get from a lot of boxers, man. A lot of boxers are they're very cut and dry. They act like, when they're talking to the public that it's pretty much a chore, or they don't want to say too much because they're afraid, that somebody may take what they say and bend it or move or twist it around and make what they say look different. Keith Thurman is somebody that is a bright guy, man, and he's sharp-witted, and that's what I got to see yesterday in this interview that was done. I saw it on Fight Hype. It seemed like it was a guy from Ness from the Boxing Voice who was doing the interview, but it was a very good interview very good interview. And Keith Thurman was talking about Errol Spence Jr. and call him a hater, man, because he was asked, like, what do you think about Errol Spence Jr. and Errol Spence Jr. saying that he won't fight you, Keith? And so Keith Thurman goes into this conversation, calls him. He's like, man, I don't know what's got this guy drinking this hater juice on me. We're eventually going to have to fight. But, I don't understand what it is, what with him, right? But then he calls him a hater and said he's drinking hater-aide. But then he explains how, in his opinion, Errol Spence and he are eventually going to have to fight if Errol gets past Manny Pacquiao. Right now, there's also some delusional thinking in there, or just some, how he's just making an argument for his, making his case to be able to get into a championship fight. But he does have some points. But the obvious reason for why Errol Spence Jr. doesn't like him is, first of all, he could start off with the fact that Keith Thurman keeps calling people boys all the time. Not people, when you said, why you hating on me, boy? I don't understand why you're doing this, boy. You calling somebody a boy, man. Maybe that's one of the reasons he doesn't like you, because anytime somebody would talk and call me a boy, I would think to myself, I'm a grown man, and after what you say after that just kind of leaves, But that's how Keith Thurman carries himself. But pretty much the reason that he's doing it is because Keith Thurman has been ducked Errol Spence Jr. for years, like blatantly, openly ducked him. Said, no, I don't have a plan to fight you. Yeah, kid, you're doing all right, kid. Yeah, son. And yeah, maybe a few years down the road, we can get to this fight, boy. Like, dude, who in the world would like you if you kept calling them boy and kids and not giving you a fight, right? But then Keith actually kind of goes into something that I think has a little bit of validity, which is that, if Keith Thurman keeps winning, then the road for Errol Spence Jr. very well may lead to Keith Thurman. I don't think that it will, but there's a chance that he will, because as of right now, if Errol gets past Manny, then Errol would have beaten all of the top welterweights with the exception of Terrence Crawford and Yordenis Ugas, who's the WBA champion. So the other two belts are out there. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that Errol Spence Jr. is going to fight one of them. Errol says that he wants to go straight to Terrence Crawford, and then from Terrence Crawford, he wants to leave the division to go to 154 pounds. But if you look at what's going on at 154 pounds, 154 pounds landscape is pretty barren, unless you bring up some of the guys from 147 to fight at 154. You have fights Errol Spence Jr., who's used to being on pay-per-view. There's the Jermell Charlo fight, which he says that he's not going to take and is reasonable. Those guys are both stablemates. Well, I don't know. If he gets into the same weight class, then no, it's not reasonable. The two guys should probably have to fight. But if you just take Jermell Charlo out of the equation, what real stars do you have in that division? You have like Tony Harrison, Erickson Lubin, guys like that, Jared Hurd, guys like that. I think maybe Saddam Ali might be, not Saddam Ali. What's the guy's name? There's another guy up there, Luis Arias, at 154 pounds. There's really just not a lot up there for him at 154. And then, so if you have Keith Thurman is somebody that is if he's winning, is definitely a viable definitely a viable fight for a championship belt. And I think that Keith Thurman also, quite honestly, deserves the fight against Errol Spence Jr. because he has one loss on his resume against Manny Pacquiao. But Keith Thurman was coming off of 2 years of inactivity, and I think that he deserves another shot to get around at a championship fight. If you look at what's going on with like Sean Porter lost to Kell Brook, who was considered probably the first or the second best welterweight in the division at the time. And then he lost again to Keith Thurman, right? And then so he still got the Errol Spence Jr. fight. Danny Garcia had lost to Keith Thurman. And so, but yet he still got the chance to fight Errol Spence Jr. in the pay-per-view. And I honestly think that all of those guys are pretty much locked together because they're all big names. They're all interesting fights that can be made. And I'm not really sure whether or not Errol's going to be able to separate himself from that and then going up to 154 pounds. Because again, like I said, there's really no major fights for him, up at that weight class. Now, what is going to happen, though, my personal opinion is that Errol Spence Jr. probably is going to hold that grudge against Keith Thurman unless Keith Thurman takes a different approach to trying to get a fight. And that is, I think, the opposite of what most people do, which is talking to the media. Keith Thurman is going to have to literally call a guy on the phone, ask for a meeting with him and say, hey, look, man, I know you don't like me. I want to get this fight. I think we can make this money. You're going to make the lion's share of the money and all that stuff. But hey, man, seriously, I do a lot to promote whatever, and have that type of conversation with Errol Spence Jr. to try to get that fight done for himself. Because although I find what he was saying very funny, and I always laugh with Keith. I don't laugh at Keith Thurman. I laugh with Keith Thurman. I think the dude is a funny dude. That I don't think is going to go a long way towards getting the fight with Errol Spence. But that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.